Hello. I was wondering if I might trouble you for a cup of strong black coffee, and in the process engage you with an anecdote of no small amusement.
Hello, nerds, and welcome to another episode of NerdyVerse here on Nerd Herder. So much nerd is happening because we love so much nerdy things. You can be a nerd about anything, and we are well known for our nerdiness of Star Wars, but we also nerd about horror.
We do.
And right now, that involves the Saw franchise. We've been talking about the Saw franchise for the last couple of episodes because it's a series we enjoy. Not
Yeah,
necessarily a favorite, but it's a good series as a whole. I mean, it's got more good than bad, I will say.
I agree. I agree that it has
It
more good than
it
bad.
wins more than it doesn't, and overall, it's one that I like to share because it's one of those that I think a lot of people don't understand. Hence, why they have the negative or no opinion
hmm
of it that they have. You know, because they see the blood and the guts, and they think that it's just all about that. When in fact, there's good twists and story and cinematography. And at least for a huge chunk of it, they really tie a really big narrative together and
Yeah.
and manage, at least for me and some people, to keep you interested. I
Yeah.
think.
Like I said on Twitter a couple of days ago, like there's so much plot in
Hmm.
these movies.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it would make more sense, and I think more people would understand it and get that if they moved away from the traps. And I think, though, unexpectedly, they ran into a genre. They'd created a genre, maybe even
hmm
for people that were interested in creative, kills, that are interested in how they create these traps, the prosthetics that they use, the way they manage to really work it out.
hmm
And so once you kind of tap into that, then I think there was this pressure to kind of continue to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And so it sort of went from being, well, it's gritty and nasty and dark circumstances for a really good story, to kind of pushing up the, well, it's very skeevy and nerve wracking and anxious, anxiety inducing kind of horror,
hmm
and we're still trying to do that story too.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Not only just created a genre of film, they also popularized that genre within the horror community. Like we had movies that were gross before, but nothing quite like Saw up until that point. I don't think that Saw 1 was really like the world's grossest movie, but it had moments that definitely had you like on the edge of your seat.
Well, it's like metal music. Metallica was not the worst thing to happen to music,
Yeah.
and they were not evil and satanic like people thought. But bands that have come after them have been and are
Oh.
bad, and it's one of those things where it's like we're so focused on this new, different thing that
hmm
we think it's evil, that inadvertently opens the door to actual evil.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into semantics of what I think evil bands are and blah blah blah, but I think there are bands that I think
yeah.
should upset parents, and then there's Metallica that are just a bunch of grandpas now, and like
I'm
they
just
nobody's scared of them.
I'm upset about Megadeth for different reasons.
And so yeah, you do see it seeping into other films where they start to say, well, we've got to get more elaborate, we've got to get more creative, we've got to
Yeah.
have a better story along with the scary. And I do think the early films of Saw marry scary and story very well.
Mm,
And I think Spiral does try to get back to that. And
it
our
tries.
whole thing, and if you want our film to film opinion, because we take the time to talk through the story, because that's our point with these. That's ultimately why we rewatch them. We're not like, oh, I want to see that specific trap or this. We watch for the story and the twists and the
Yeah.
intrigue.
We watch for the plot.
And so we journeyed through that for the last couple of episodes. But if you watched along for all of that, then you know that where the series previously ended, quote unquote, for the second time with Jigsaw in 2017,
hmm
we were a little dissatisfied. It just it didn't feel like this should be the last film in the series.
Yeah.
It's fine if it's in the series. Every series has down films, films that they just happen.
Yeah.
Heck, even Saw 5 is like that, where it's like Saw 5's not as great, but it has to continue stories to get us to Saw 6 that is interesting, and Saw
Yeah.
7, and so forth.
Yeah, like it's not filler, but it's definitely not
Well,
like a concrete.
I think it's filler, but I don't think it's a negative filler. I think
I
it's just
agree.
it what connects the dots from
Mhm.
4 to 6, which is where the real story continues and everything. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you kind of have to watch it because there's that one conversation and there's that one thing, but
Mhm.
overall, you're not you like if you go from 4 to 6, you're not technically missing much.
Yeah.
Um, but nonetheless, when you're watching it all the way through, you kind of watch 5 by being carried by the other ones.
Yeah.
And similarly with Jigsaw, if there was something else to come after it, if there was something that it would flow into, I think it wouldn't be so meh.
Yeah.
And overall, it is interesting.
It had some very interesting traps. Like I
And
love the blender. That was
I,
great.
I think here continues at least some of the things that are interesting about it in
Mhm.
Spiral. And so, yeah, Spiral's a whole different thing. John Kramer is mentioned. The original
Yeah.
Jigsaw is mentioned, and that's it. And I appreciate them so much for that. Um,
Yeah.
with the subtitle of this, it kind of gave clues that it was going to distance away. But I appreciate that they really stuck to it. And so it's from the
Yeah.
book of Saw.
And if we didn't say it earlier, I'm gonna go and call out spoilers for the entire movie if you have
Oh,
not
yeah, I feel
watched
like,
it.
yeah, because this is new.
Because
This is brand new.
yeah, like we went to see it a couple days after opening.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, and I think we were very hyped for it
yeah.
because it was interesting, number one, to see the series come back
Hmm.
after it felt like, number one, it should have stopped when Kramer died. They
Hmm.
managed to keep it interesting even after that. But then the most interesting plot, his apprentice out there doing his own thing, also got wrapped up. And so it's like, okay, I would have been okay if you stopped here.
Hmm.
You went further, and I was okay with it, and then you stopped. So I'm like, what else? And that's kind of what Jigsaw was trying to deal with.
Yeah.
What else do we do? But it's still tied too directly to the original films, I think.
Hmm.
Jigsaw was still too big of a piece of the puzzle. Whereas
Yeah.
here, yeah,
I see what you did there.
very punny. Here he's not.
Yeah.
Here he is merely the inspiration for our actual killer.
Yes.
Which,
And we're gonna go ahead and say killer. This
yeah,
dude is out for blood.
yeah, and so and that's the thing. So Spiral,
Hmm.
the title I think is meant to allude to it. So it's Spiral from the Book of Saw. So it's the idea of Spiral is the killer.
Hmm.
I don't know if he ever directly calls himself that, but I'm gonna say
I
that's
don't
who
think he
he's
does.
Spiral. Um, and from the Book of Saw insinuates he is who he is by the inspiration of John Kramer's Jigsaw,
Yeah.
and that's really it's a large part of his
Yeah.
motivation.
He's very similar to Hoffman in that sense. Is like he was wronged, therefore he wants to exact
Well,
revenge on the people
even
who wronged
even the
him.
guy from Jigsaw, and
Hmm.
see, but I think this does a more interesting aspect because the other dude, he uses Jigsaw to his own means, but he also still tries to push a Jigsaw narrative,
Yeah,
except for that one guy.
except for that one guy.
He like it's one of those things where it's like, by and large, I agree with Jigsaw, but not in your case
Yeah,
because of personal vendetta. So it's again one of those things where it's like it's holding back the character's intrigue because he's trying to just copy completely an original and already dead character.
yeah. I have a question that is going to come up later. Do we ever find out what Article 8 is?
Yeah,
What is Article
that's
8?
the big ending. Well, we'll get there.
Okay,
Um,
sorry.
so this story sets up in a different but similar way to that. So whereas in
Yeah.
Jigsaw the killer comes back because of personal vendetta,
Hmm.
but still tries to adhere to Jigsaw terms. This one is, like we said before, completely disconnected. He's
Yeah.
inspired by the beliefs of Jigsaw, but with a lot of his own personal means. So this guy comes in and does his own thing essentially in order to play his game. It's not
Yeah.
therapy, it's not rehabilitation, it's just him using inspiration from a killer to become his own killer.
It's an edgy boy doing edgy things.
Right. And so our main character is played by Chris Rock, which is very interesting because
Dude,
he had a big hand in getting this made.
yeah, like that was awesome. I've never seen him in a serious role before.
I don't think I have either. It's definitely not horror.
No, I was really impressed,
Yeah,
honestly.
he did a great job. And honestly, he's the best part of this film. Samuel L. Jackson's
Yeah.
in it too. There's not a bad Samuel L.
No.
Jackson movie. And don't you dare say Snakes on the Plane, because the only reason you can watch that movie is because of Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
So,
I am
my
sick
point stands.
of these monkey fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane. All right.
I've never heard that one before. So Chris Rock really dominates this and really leads the ship in the
Mhm.
way. It's a good and a bad thing. And I said this right after watching this movie. And actually, we were kind of going back and forth with texts while we're watching this.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things, we want to be polite in the theater and
Yeah.
not talk. But part of what we do when we're watching these movies and everything is we take notes, we talk about it, and that's what ends up creating the show, the podcast.
Yeah, I have my spiral what the heck is happening notes
There you go.
on my phone the whole time because I have ADHD.
Yeah.
My short-term memory is not great.
Mhm.
So I like to make notes in the moment when we watch movies that we're going to cover on the podcast.
Well, and it's one we're not going to be able to rewatch if we're like, there's moments where we're like, hey, I know we watched this last week for the show, but I don't like, let's watch it again just so I can make sure I'm clear on something.
Mhm.
We couldn't do that with it. I mean, we could if we wanted to spend the money on tickets again, but like,
Yeah.
we're not going to.
No.
I'm just saying, I'm not going to watch this again until it's on stream, and it's going
Yeah.
to be very soon.
And you know what? We are going to watch this again. Like,
Yeah.
we are big proponents of, like, if you're not super into a movie the first time you watch it, watch
Try
it again.
Well, I think this, in like watching it in conjunction, I think will feel better.
Yes.
I do like it more than Jigsaw.
I
I think
agree.
it's a better addition to the story than Jigsaw was. It still does suffer from, and what we talked about was it's this idea of, and yes, James Wan and Leigh Whannell came back to executive produce alongside Chris Rock. Chris Rock had stake in this game, which I
Mhm.
appreciate so much. He's part of why it got made, and that's really cool because he cared about it.
Yeah.
But like we talked about how there's a big difference between, oh, I've watched all these movies, I love these movies, I'd love the chance to make one,
Mm-hmm.
versus I have fundamentally sought to understand what the creator was going for, and I want to continue that story
Yes.
where they're not going to. Yes, we had original creators of the series, James Wan and Leigh Whannell, executive producing. I definitely think that's much more of a look at this, what do you think? Oh,
Mhm.
that's cool. You know, like I don't think I think they're the type to be like, well, this is your story. I can say that I think the killer might do this or that should mean this, but
Mm-hmm.
overall, I think what you're doing is cool. The difference is it's not always in making good film. It's not always just about doing what'd be cool because it's a Saw movie. It's sometimes what's doing something that's narratively fitting, something that has a double meaning and a lot of things. And some of that happens here, some of it doesn't. And so I think last week when we were talking about Jigsaw, and I was like, this feels like it was made by fans. It That's a good and a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's why I don't agree with, oh, I've seen all the Star Wars, I've read all the books, and I get Star Wars and I should make a movie. I don't think so. I don't think just because you're a fan that's enough of a qualifier. You've got to be a good filmmaker. You've got to be a good writer.
Not
you know?
everyone should wake up as the head of Lucasfilm. Like, can
Yes,
we just
to
establish
ride
that?
current Twitter trends.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, although I think both of these films, and I can say as much for Spiral for sure,
Yeah.
both of these films were made by fans.
Yeah.
I don't think they had enough behind them of, all right, I get you're a fan of these things, but this is what the film should do.
Yes.
I don't think there was enough navigation there to end up with a 100 out of 100 result.
Yeah, I mean, I had the thought during a certain point of the film where I was just like, it feels like they're just checking off boxes.
Yeah,
Like,
and
and that's not a bad thing, I
I
don't
mean, it's
think.
a safe bet for sure,
Yeah.
considering how long it's been since we've gotten a solid Saw movie. So
Hmm.
I think it is very much this thing of like, this is for people that have never seen. This might be a gateway to some people for the Saw
Yeah.
films. But then it's also one of those things where it's just like, we don't want to go too new and too unknown.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of factors, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm not gonna go on. They should have done this. They should have done that.
No.
At the end of the day, I'm okay with what we got.
Oh yeah.
I think I'm just talking through part of the reasons I think I feel the way I feel about what we got.
Yeah. Like I see in my notes a couple times like this movie's really funny.
It is
It
very
is
funny.
very funny.
I love the moments where they clearly just let Chris Rock kind of like,
Yes.
hey, you're gonna be mad at this guy. I need you to just dig into him and say whatever you would say if he had just said this about your mama.
Mhm.
And like
Dude, at the beginning, the Forrest Gump speech killed me. Like I was straight up chortling throughout that whole thing.
I thought it was a
Yeah.
I thought it was a great start, and I guess we'll go from there to start actually talking about the story.
There we go. Helpful.
Um, I thought it was a great start to kind of set up the kind of character he's going to be.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, it's Marv. Nope, not Marv. Okay, I saw this movie once. Okay, Zeke Banks.
Zeke
Sorry,
Banks.
that's
Yeah.
right, because Ezekiel,
Perfect.
which I love that touch.
That was great.
Um, so it was a great start to see the kind of personality,
Hmm.
the kind of worldview that he has, where it's just like, because they're talking about the fundamental issues of Ginny potentially giving Forrest AIDS.
Which
Um,
is a conversation I've had with people before.
I feel like this is a real conversation. It's
Absolutely. I
hilarious.
think we've had this conversation before.
But the opening scene kind of serves to show us that he is not your normal cop. We
Mhm.
knew from the trailers, we knew he was a cop and everything.
Yeah.
So, but first off, you're almost wondering of, wait, what?
Hmm.
Is he a bad cop? Is he, and it shows that he pushes the boundaries.
Yeah.
But he has good reason to, because immediately following a very ridiculous and botched undercover thing that he didn't get clearance for,
Hmm.
he's railroaded by the chief because of his unwillingness to work with the team.
Yeah.
But he's like a team that doesn't want to work with me.
Exactly.
I really like what they set up there of making him the black sheep, and only because of what the story does with that
Hmm.
moving forward. Um, Normally, I'm not a big fan of this is the one good soul on this department, and like I'm not a big fan of like completely making the department depend on one good cop and everything.
Hmm.
But I think that the story that they're going for here serves very well with that.
Yeah. And we completely forgot. This starts off with a game.
Yeah. Which I enjoy that it's a game that actually matters. So
Yes.
normally the first thing we jump into with this is just random.
Hmm.
We have no ties. It doesn't come up later. It's just for introducing our detective,
Mhm.
right? And so, but here, as we find out later, though, this matters because we find, okay, first of all, okay, so it's a July 4th party. Lady gets her purse stolen.
Hmm.
Cop chases him down. All right.
Yes.
He's tricked into following him into the sewers. First off, it's a dang purse. It is not worth that.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, with no backup and no idea what's going on,
Uh-huh.
I'm not following someone into the dang sewer for a purse with tampons, $3.50, and maybe a cell phone. Like, no, no, ma'am. You can get that all back. Just cancel your cards.
All I'm saying is that tampons are expensive. Man.
Not that expensive. Not for my life. I mean, like, what would so
Not for your life.
as the spiral killer? What would you do if the cop was just like, "Ma'am, it's not worth it." Like, what if he was just like, "Nah, I'm not doing that." Like, where do you go? What do you do next?
You do the Jigsaw special and attack him at home in a pig mask.
Right. Apparently.
Like,
So yeah, he chases a dude, a thief down into the sewers and ends up getting jumped by a pig
Yeah.
mask. And the pig mask is the killer. I appreciate that it's not.
it's not a disciple.
Yeah. It's a duality. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where he is a disciple, but he's a disciple that's chosen to become the killer. If that
Mhm.
makes sense. So it's like,
He's working on his own.
yes, he is the killer, but it's a cool little narrative thing, and that's one of those things where I'm like, that's the kind of stuff where you play off the original, you make it make sense, it's interesting. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, because the original kidnapping scene in Saw 1 is just one of the best horror movie scenes I've
And
ever seen.
it's good to redo. It's
Yeah.
not good to redo, I think, 6 times
No.
in this movie.
It's done like
Like,
7
most, all of
times.
its jump scares are the pig mask.
And none of them were scary.
Yeah,
Like,
it's literally just you come out of nowhere, and that's not a scare.
Yeah,
That's just
no.
making people jump.
it's jumping out behind a corner going boo.
Boo. Yeah, it's like, that's not real. Stop.
Yeah.
And so he wakes up in a trap in the subway.
Yeah, his tongue is between bars. I think there's a nail through his tongue too.
Yeah, he's
stuck.
effectively stuck there by his tongue, and he's told. Okay, so we get our picture into what this killer's motives are. He's a cop, obviously, and Spiral tells him, "You've lied. You've sat on the witness stand and you've railroaded witnesses all the time to get what you want, and now's your chance to make up for that. You're gonna lose your tongue if you want to live, or you're just gonna get hit by the train."
Yeah, he's in there in such a way that if he steps off the box that he is
His
standing
his
on,
weight will
yeah,
tear it out.
and the tongue effect is so gross. I'm so proud of Spiral. For
They
this.
don't do too much. They do
No.
enough to where it's like we want it to seem real, but we don't show it so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's one particular trap that I don't think would have worked out, but that's just me. We'll talk about it when we
Okay.
get there.
So ultimately, he tries to go against the grain and figure it out himself, and it doesn't work. So he gets
Yeah.
hit by the train.
Yeah.
And
That
so
poor train driver.
our main character Zeke is called in with his new partner, who is William Shank.
Yes.
Which Shank.
Shank.
Interesting. And so there, he's a rookie, and he's the chief's solution. The very
Blue Bloods.
get these lines off of Fox, CBS, and ABC police chief, where
Yeah.
all of her lines are just recycled old school, like
Yeah.
police chief
They could
garbage.
have just gotten Tom Selleck to sit behind a
I
desk in
mean,
his tiny glasses.
I don't
and
know.
be
It's just like this isn't. I mean, it's one of those things. She's fine. She's a great actress.
She's great.
She at least sells it, but
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's like she's just giving lines that you
Yeah.
can find in any police procedural. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like she was kind of disserviced there a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but her solution is, all right, you're going to learn to play well with others, so here's a rookie. Great idea. Give a guy that doesn't care about other people a person to care about. And, in real life, that would be more troublesome.
And on their way to the crime scene, we get another fantastic scene of just dialogue.
Oh, I love when, it was just like,
I feel like Pilates isn't real.
I felt like his line, his direction was, look, you're going through a divorce and you hate it. Go. And he just like rips off of this whole thing because, Shank's talking about his wife and kid and all this other stuff.
The funniest part is that you can see him trying not to laugh in
Yeah,
the car.
well, he's a great actor.
He
is fantastic. He's played by Max Minghella, and he really sells this
it.
awkward rookie. Like, oh, I don't know if you're serious. Is this a joke? Like, I don't want to be hazed for this if I say the wrong thing. Like,
my wife loves Pilates.
He works so well.
He does.
And so, but yeah, I love that bit where he's just like, women, they cheat in the day. You can do a lot in the day. I found out Pilates aren't even real. I love that because that's so stupid.
As a woman who does Pilates, like,
I'm
offended.
And he was even like, oh, Rachel loves Pilates. It's just like, I'm sure she does. Like, I love when Chris Rock is just able, like, so often the Saw movies don't actually have humor.
Yes.
They don't have fun character,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate this so much because normally we're just in the trap. We're just stuck with trap people all the time, and it's just like it's nice to have main characters that are on the hunt 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Unlike Wahlberg's character in the second one, where he's kind of in the game without knowing it. This is much more like Zeke is an independent piece on the chessboard, I think. And I think that serves his character well because he's not dictated by the killer.
Yeah.
He gets to do what Zeke would do, not what he's forced to do, if that makes sense. So they investigate it, they figure it out, they get the clue that they got to go to the courthouse where Spiral is, where a video shows off. And the video is addressed to Banks. And so we start to see that, okay, this killer's obsessed with banks, which is what I was talking about earlier, where it's just like they use it to the advantage that he's an outsider, that
Mhm.
he's not a part of the force, really. He kind of does his own thing and does what he thinks is right.
Yeah.
And the killer's trying to use that because his vendetta is against the police department. So all of the traps that we see, all of the victims are going to be police.
Yes.
And so taking something that Jigsaw normally does of, hey, you're wrong, you need to change, he's applying that instead of a person, he's applying that to a system. He's saying the police are corrupt. The
Mhm.
police are wrong in this department and they've done a lot of bad things. And I want to change them. And but his idea is to a next level of what Jigsaw would do it where at least with Jigsaw you get out of there like it's gonna suck, but at least you lived and hopefully you'll change.
Yeah.
With Spiral, it's much more of no, I want you to live with punishment.
Yeah.
Like if you live, cool, but you're gonna lose something. Like you're gonna lose quality of life.
Mhm.
It's one of those ideas where it's like, no, you didn't die, but you're going to a jail. You're going
Yeah. You're
to
suffering the rest of your
exactly.
life.
And so he's clearly got vendetta. He's clearly got intentions behind what
Mhm.
he's doing,
Yeah, and I think it's at this point that we find out a little bit more of Zeke's backstory, where the reason he's hated within the department is
which
he
is
turned in
a
a
very
dirty cop.
typical thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, like okay, so this is where one they use a very interesting thing where I'm just like they kind of push it hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the whole he sold it. Or I don't want to say that. He told the truth about
Mm-hmm.
something his partner did wrong,
Yes.
and he's ostracized for it. But then literally everyone else on the department becomes horrible people and treats
Mm-hmm.
him horribly. Which then an interesting twist to all of this is he has reason from outside looking in to not care about any of the people in the traps, to
Yeah.
not like to almost even be a suspect for putting them there
Yeah.
because all of them in one way or the other screwed him over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting I mean, we as the audience know he didn't do it, but like it's an interesting play to try and cause a little extra strife
Yeah.
as he's trying to solve this problem. So he's actually trying to catch this killer, but at every turn he's being questioned because yeah, you're not one of us. You don't really care. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And but the scene where he deals with another cop
Mm-hmm.
who called the wife of the first victim, and like he hates everybody else, but
Mm-hmm.
the first dude at least was still good to him, still
Yeah.
trusted him
Bosh.
everything, even though
Boss.
he was a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
He still was nice to Zeke, and so he has a flip out, and that's some of the best acting in all of this
Yes.
from Chris
Did
Rock.
you use a dead husband emoji?
Right, like you called her. You know his wife.
Yeah.
Like it's the kind of thing. Again, it's one of those things where it's just like they give him a little bit of direction, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just like, "You go with it." I don't feel like you can write stuff for Chris
Mm-hmm.
Rock like that.
Yeah. The next scene is it's interesting it, when they visit the wife.
Oh yeah,
She's just
yeah.
got like the Baptist wife smeared mascara the whole scene and just like a gentle shakedown.
I love so Zeke's going through a divorce. We mentioned that earlier. His ex is there. I love the part where he first talks to the victim's wife,
Mm-hmm.
pays his respects and everything. Then she goes. Then the ex shows up, and it's that awkward divorcee stuff where they use their names and all that stuff. And in the middle of that, Shank pops in and tries to introduce himself, and I just like I loved
It's so
that.
funny.
Again, the humor in this normally, and I don't know how other people feel
Mm-hmm.
about humor in horror, but I love this so much because it's done so
Yes.
well, and
And
so that's one of my favorite little moments with
yeah,
Shank there. I don't really have much else to say about the wife scene.
not really. It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
It
it's
doesn't
kind
do much.
yeah, it's meant to kind of pay off of the flip out he had that he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the one that was um, given the opportunity to call the wife because he actually has
Yeah.
a relationship, like they know each other, they're friends and everything
Yeah.
like that.
And then we get a visit from Dad.
Yeah, so as they start to work on the case, of course, we we've had it hinted at, but here we really see like he's former police chief.
Mm-hmm.
He's Zeke's father.
He likes to build trains.
Yeah. And so he kind of just pops in to just see how he's doing because he knows that they had a relationship
Mm-hmm.
together and everything. So it's like, you know, but it's very much that just like, you'll be okay.
It's
Toughen up,
such
champ.
dad dialogue. I think it's just Samuel L. Jackson being a dad.
Right?
Like, it's so funny. Like, oh, you want to have dinner? Okay, let's have dinner.
Right. Like, oh, okay, that is that what makes me a good dad? Okay, we'll
let's
order some
let's have
pizza.
some
Come
food.
over. Like, you know, it's I mean, I enjoy it. I
Yeah.
enjoy what they're going for because I mean that's a very real
Mm-hmm.
aspect. Many people, many sons have that kind of relationship with their father where it's just very man to man. It's not like we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be friends throughout this, and especially with the added aspect of you're a cop, I was the police chief, I'm retired, but even still, it's still kind of playing into our relationship where it's just like I'm talking to you like I'd talk to a cop. I just care about you a little bit more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's well done. It's good chemistry between the two of them, which I mean, Chris Rock
Oh yeah,
and Jackson, like
they do
really good
great.
actors. Yeah, they play off of each other well. Um, and then so we get our next kill. Because the whole department's been put on searching for any evidence they can find,
Mm-hmm.
last whereabouts, anything of this first victim. And so the worst of the worst from the earlier scenes of the cops that just look down on Chris Rock's character is
Mm-hmm.
the guy who is following up on a lead of this homeless guy, this junkie, who was spotted with the victim in the beginning.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I know that guy. I'm going to go chase him down.
Yeah, and like it's a good setup. I think for the scene and for just this character is garbage,
Yeah,
and we later find out
yeah,
why
they
he's
they they
garbage.
they really like I said, he's the worst of the worst.
Yeah, he's got a
Um,
scar on his cheek.
what's interesting is so when it's like, oh, we found something out, should we call it in? He's like, nah,
Nah.
which plays off of an earlier scene or a flashback
Mm-hmm.
where Chris Rock's character is cornered with a guy with a gun, and he's calling for backup, and partner goes to this guy's name's Fitch, and is like, should we help him out? And he's like, nah. And I love that parallel of
Mm-hmm.
that's his perspective. Now, if he had called for help, if he had assisted, if he had done something right, he might not have ended up in the trap.
Mm-hmm.
He might not have been on the crap list with this killer. Who knows? But either way, he does get caught.
Mm-hmm.
He never finds the junkie. He only gets pig masked and wakes up in a trap.
I couldn't figure out what this trap was at first, and I get it like once they explained it, but I did not understand what was supposed to happen here at first.
He was supposed to lose his fingers.
Yeah, like I had a little bit of trouble kind of processing that at first, which
Yeah,
doesn't make it a bad
I mean
trap.
it's overly elaborate, but I feel like
It's
that's Saw.
incredibly overly elaborate.
Because the whole thing is supposed to be, it's very much one of those like if your hand causes you to sin thing. So we find out that so the first guy was a liar. This guy basically just he pulled over a guy who didn't respect him, and so for that he shot him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was one of those things where it's just like, oh, you don't care? Okay, well I don't care. And
Yeah.
his and one other was two very hard ones to watch because it looks too real to what
It's
we've seen in real life lately.
yeah.
Um, and I don't know how much of that was. I know some of it had to obviously inform this film, the plot and
Yeah.
the ideology behind it and everything. But um, yeah, it was very hard to watch because these are very real issues. Um, you know, take away the puppets, the pig masks, and all this other stuff. There are cops out there
Mm-hmm.
that abuse their power, that are corrupt, and there are good cops that are ostracized for being good cops
Mm-hmm.
and for bringing accountability to a system like this. And so it's one of those things where it really plays off of. So just as much as you might be uncomfortable watching a guy rip his tongue out, I was just as uncomfortable watching the police footage of this guy shooting an unarmed person in the car.
Yeah.
It was a little real, and I think again this is one of those circumstances where it's silly, it's a horror movie, it's crazy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
gory, but don't lose the story because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's truth to this story. I feel like there's meaning to it, and so
Yeah.
it's very highlighted in these flashbacks.
It's the worst I think one of the worst things about the Saw movies, not like, that makes them bad or anything, it makes them even better, I think, is the nugget of realism in every single one of these movies
Yeah.
that these are saw traps that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that happen in real life. Like, I don't think anybody's going to go to the extent that Tobin Bell does.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, this movie, like you said, it was hard to watch at times
Mm-hmm.
because of how real it was. And I think that's what makes this a good movie.
Yeah.
Is the reality of what people are dealing with in
Mm-hmm.
the modern day. Like
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like we're not dealing with junkies, we're not dealing with generically agreed upon bad people. We're talking about people that shouldn't be bad people that are.
we're talking
And
about civil servants.
and that's what Spiral's whole motivation is y'all are supposed to be good people and you're not, so I'm going to judge you. And so it's one of those, if your hand causes you to sin, cut off your hand, where it's like you have to run the machine that's going to rip your fingers off in order to escape in time with your life. He always says, your choice, live or die. It like the power is in your hands. And it's one of those things, again, that plays off of the idea of them being caught. The power is in your hands, how you handle these criminals, these victims, all of this. You have power in your hand for life or death. And it's one of those things, he's putting that power back in, but he's making it their own life or death. You're now responsible for your life or your death.
And this one was hard to watch for a completely different reason.
Really?
Mostly just because it was gross.
Oh, right. This one, again, it's overly elaborate, but basically he's
Yeah.
tied up to a thing that's going to pull his fingers off if he runs the machine.
I would rather have something just one chop
Yeah.
cut my fingers off. I would do that in a heartbeat, but feeling your fingers ripped from your body, watching in that scene the muscle tearing in the...
Well, I feel like something
gross.
kind of like this has already been done where it's just like you have to, like your eyes cause you to sin, so you have to activate that. So it's one of those things where I feel like they one-upped it where like we can't just make him press a button and cut off a finger at a time.
You can really tell that he wasn't going for, a quick solution. He wanted them to suffer.
Absolutely. And ultimately you're going to be left with scars you can't fix. Like the other guy, you're going to be mute for the rest of your life. You're going to be, handless essentially for the rest of your life. Like he's going for, you are going to live with this sin if you live. Of course, he doesn't make it in time and ends up dying. They find him later. They follow up on some more leads, essentially. It leads Zeke to go back to his previous partner, Pete. Because, and what we don't know of initially, he's like, if anybody had a vendetta against me, it'd be Pete. But then we find out when he meets him that this is the former partner. So it didn't hit me until later in that. So they say, he did 8 years hard time, and now he's out and he's doing this, reformed thing. He's running groups in a church, talking to people and trying to get people past their lives. And I'm not trying to downplay that. Real people change their lives, lead home groups, and do a lot of good. But the thing is, when we find out what he did, 8 years hard time for murder.
Yeah.
So the thing that Zeke sold him out for was he was talking to a witness, asked him if he could confirm an identity and if he would testify.
Yeah, against a cop.
Yes. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, okay. And he kills him because it turns out if he had done that, it would have indicted him. And so he was trying to, I guess, coerce him into, like, you sure you want to do this? He gave him a chance, sure. But ultimately, when he decided, no, I'm going to do the right thing, okay, I'm going to protect myself. So he shot him, blamed it that he pulled a gun on him.
Setting up yet another character doing the right thing and getting absolutely just destroyed for it.
So Zeke sells him out, and we actually see a flashback earlier of what his father's reaction to this was. So he's meeting with him, and by the way, their idea of let's show they're younger, let's throw on some fake facial hair,
cap and a goatee. It's so stupid.
Chris Rock has more facial hair. He has like a beard and goatee, and then Samuel L. Jackson just has a big old caterpillar mustache. It's hilarious.
So funny.
But his whole thing is his father's worried about protecting the department. Did you think of how this is going, like the work I'm going to have to do to cover this up, and not cover it up in that sense, but like to make this okay. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna indict him and all that stuff, but now I'm gonna have cops that don't trust you, that don't trust me, and all this like
Mm-hmm.
and that basically he was warning him of all the things that were gonna come next. Of what's gonna happen because you decided to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't care about the doing the right thing part though.
No.
The father just cares about the department, the reputation, the work, all of that. And so, and that's where we get our first mention of like Section 8 or
Article 8.
Article 8 is, that cops were given too much authority and power
Mm-hmm.
and ran wild with it. And Pete even says as much. So, I mean, regardless, he does say, I shouldn't have
Yeah.
killed the guy. I was, but he understands, like, as wrong as I was wrong because of a wrong system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he's completely saying if this was different, I wouldn't have. I think bad people are bad people, and
Yeah.
if you give them the opportunity, they will be bad people.
Bad people will find a way to justify their bad actions.
Right, and I do believe bad people can change. I think here he recognizes, hey, I did a bad thing, but ultimately it's not going to stop because y'all kicked me out and put me in prison.
Mm-hmm.
It was corrupted in the system itself. It came from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but it's just a red herring, at least for now, to introduce Pete. I thought it was a really good moment. Um, again, for more acting from Chris Rock, but again, to add more layers to this story. And then I think the next thing is the chief, right? Her trap.
Hang on.
Yeah, because they
No,
leave there.
next is the trap house.
What trap house?
The meth house. They go to the meth house next.
I don't
to
really
find
want
the
to talk
junkie.
about that.
It was fine.
It was funny.
It was funny, and
on a time constraint. It was a funny scene where
a-
they go to try to find the meth head that
Yeah.
Fitch was chasing after.
Yes, and then
That's it.
they get a call, officer down, which an officer got slashed
Nope.
in the arm. No?
No, not yet.
Not
So
yet?
that all that happens. The Pete thing and the trap house happened to give Shank and Zeke moments together.
You're right.
Because the next day,
You're right.
Shank is found dead in a meat house, skinned alive. Bet you didn't know that Spiral was a predator.
Yeah.
So and
Here's-
this is one of those things though. I'm sorry, I just
You're
real
fine.
quick. Where it shows progress. They don't revel, like they show glimpses of things,
Yeah.
but they don't completely revel in the skinned body and like they don't completely
No.
revel in.
They don't even show the face.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like we get enough, we know what happened. It's enough to make me uncomfortable, but I don't need to see all of it. I don't need to
Yeah.
glorify it. Like again, I think this is a great example of how they balance things out.
And the whole time he's been getting boxes and stuff like that. And the way that they find out where he
Oh, yeah.
is they open a big box
Mm-hmm.
and it's got the pig puppet wrapped in skin
Mm-hmm.
with Charlie written over
Yeah,
it,
because
which
apparently
is the
Shank,
dad's name.
which I didn't see that
Oh, yeah.
until the flashback where they were like, in case you missed it,
In case you missed
that's
it.
that's Shank's tattoo.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where it's literally just, and he does well with it of just this whole like, he was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
He like, and
They go back and they show a lot.
do we go ahead and say
He's the disciple.
He's
not
not
the
dead.
disciple. He's
here's your first clue because he did nothing wrong.
I called it.
Here's the thing, like the for the Spiral Killer to just all of a sudden be like, oh, this person that was a good person, I'm killing him because you're investigating. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't add up to his motives
I'll
up
go-
until this point.
I'll go back and right after the Forrest Gump speech is hilarious. I have in my notes the rookie is definitely a disciple. So like
Absolutely.
there is a line that gives it away immediately.
Yeah,
of, like,
you caught.
I've been waiting for this since I was 12 years old.
Right.
Like that, and I was just like, oh yeah.
So
Okay,
we'll go
yeah.
ahead and say the witness
Spiral.
that Pete killed, that
Yeah.
Zeke's partner killed, was this guy's father.
Mm-hmm.
He watched everything, and ultimately Zeke saw him, and that was maybe even the only reason he actually did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
He saw the aftermath and was like, "This is not. I can't
Yeah.
not do something." But then nothing seems to happen with the kid. Like obviously, I guess he just goes into the system. It's just stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
But he's hearing about this jigsaw killer and all this other stuff, and he starts to believe like, oh, this guy believes people should be punished and changed through life or death situations. Maybe that's what I should do with these cops. Maybe I should teach them a lesson and all this other stuff. And he sticks with that.
Mm-hmm.
the planets align that he gets in the right department with the right partner and all this, and then he
Yeah.
starts his game. Um, and so we find out, though, the chief gets put in her own trap. And this
Yeah.
is where it gets revealed she was the right-hand man of the police chief during Article 8 times. So
Yeah.
all this bad stuff that cops would do, she would help cover up. And so her trap has to do with getting covered up in wax.
This is the one that
Okay,
I was like, she wouldn't have lived. She would not have lived.
she didn't.
Well, yeah, like her thing is she
Oh,
has to sever her spinal cord.
all
Or
I want to
else.
know, yeah. So to stop the wax from pouring on her, she has to sever her spinal cord. What I want to know is how does the machine know she's done it?
Exactly.
Like I don't get this one.
Here's okay. And she goes about it in such a dumb way where she's just like rubbing it on the spike. When in reality, just lift your head up, one good thwack.
Right.
You're good.
And it's one of those things where she'd live paralyzed, but she'd be alive.
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
my other thing with this is it's a fine trap, but it's revealed that she gets jumped in the records hall, and then she's in the trap, right?
yeah.
Well, then when they go to look for her, they find her in the records hall. This dude got a whole trap in the police department, which he is a cop. We find out later,
Yeah.
so I guess that makes sense. But my
Yeah.
thing is, you got a whole trap in there. How did no one notice this? And then they look at the footage and they're like, only 13 minutes are missing. Only 13 minutes?
This man is not only Jigsaw, he is a wizard.
Exactly. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
Like,
This one was fine. It was
It's
fine.
the wax effect was fine.
You could tell it was more, we just need her to die.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, nobody cared about her because her dialogue was crap. Like, we just need to get to the climax at this
Yeah.
point. So he goes looking for Pete, and I love that I caught this. I don't think anybody else in the theater got this because I looked around when I saw it because I'm like, oh my gosh, did I just see what I think I saw?
Mm-hmm.
So he goes back to the church where he interrogated Pete earlier.
Yes.
He walks in, and blurred in the very far background, you see Pig Mask.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going through my head. I'm like, I think it looks like that, but it could just be a altar boy. I don't know. Like, I don't know what that could
how
be.
altar boys be wearing pig masks.
Well, it's blurred. It's like
Yeah.
it looks like it could be that, right? Pete's not there, so he goes to leave. When he leaves out the same way he came in,
Mhm.
not there. I'm like, yup.
That was a pig mask.
So I loved that little
was
subtlety.
good.
That was really good. Because there's so many times where it just seems paranormal. Like, where did they come from?
Mm-hmm.
I like that very real of like, nope, they were there, and they completely depended on not getting noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kidnaps Zeke. Turns out he's been trying to reach his dad. His dad went to investigate a warehouse for some reason.
I don't remember, man.
I don't know why, but he went to investigate a warehouse, got caught by the killer. And so the final climax is a choice to save your dad. Oh, well, the Pete thing.
The Pete thing, and also red herring, which I did not like this red herring. They did it specifically for the trailer.
Oh,
where
he's chained up and he's got the saw.
He lifts a saw, and then he notices a bobby pin, uses the saw to get the bobby pin, and I was just like, oh, come on, man.
I think that was the
fine.
partner being like, look, I want to give you a chance.
Yeah, that was absolutely just a nod.
And so, yeah, Pete's in a trap. I don't really care. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is
an interesting trap.
This is a very Saw 3 one where it's like, are you going to do the right thing? Are you going to help him?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to let him, be punished as he should be?
The glass effect was fine.
And so, yeah, he's getting glass hurled at him while Zeke is trying to figure out how to get him out. He figures it out too late, and Pete's dead. But when the big reveal happens, when Zeke meets Shank, and Shank explains all of it, he says that it was a test, and he couldn't believe that he would actually help this scumbag. And
Mm-hmm.
that's your clue in. That's what he doesn't necessarily want them to win.
Yeah.
He gives them opportunities to win, but he's fine with them dying. He's
Mhm.
fine with their judgment and everything like that. And that's where we get the whole speech of, yeah, he shot my father. I became this because of that, and all this other stuff. And
Mhm.
I want to judge the system. I think that this could be a group of people. It doesn't have to be just me, and it doesn't have to be one killer. And, we can do a lot of good. You find the bad cops, I kill them. It's, So he makes a big old proposal.
Yeah.
Like, he's got this big old monopoly.
And this whole time, Zeke's dad is in a trap.
Yeah, where it's like slowly draining his blood and everything.
That's not the best trap,
Well,
but
yeah.
it's a trap.
The real trap is he going to make the right choice?
Yes.
So he says, if you shoot that target, it'll release your father, and you'll be free. And you better do it quick, because he calls the SWAT. And if the SWAT enter the room, it's set up in such a way that it activates a backup plan.
Which is very good.
And this is a very Wahlberg's detective character moment of, like, if you had just listened, if you paid attention, and you made the right choices, it would have been different. And so he shoots the target to release his dad, but then immediately goes after Shank and tries to settle that vendetta, and completely misses the whole thing of the backup plan. And so the SWAT team enters, and the backup plan's triggered.
Yes.
And it raises up his father again, and makes him look like a puppet.
Yes.
And then gives him what appears to be a gun that he's forced to point at the SWAT team.
Yes, I thought this was really cool.
I thought it was, so it was a dual purpose. So this entire time, Billy the Puppet has been replaced with, oh my gosh, what's he called?
Pig Puppet.
He's got a name.
He do. I don't remember what it is though. Kyle.
I'm hoping they mention it somewhere. I saw that it was he got a full on name, but anyway, I didn't get at first. I thought the pig puppet was because, oh, I wear a pig mask, but no, it's a pig puppet dressed up as a cop.
Exactly.
And so it's the duality of, hey, now you look like the pig puppet, but then he puts him in the shoes of what so many victims have been put in, where the cops don't make the right, like,
they make a snap judgment,
and ultimately, so the chief gets killed. The police chief, former, gets killed because of that.
Shank gets away, and Zeke is just
freaking out,
just destroyed.
Yeah, I like the new version of the theme that plays.
It was very cool.
It was really cool. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's the classic Saw of just like right up until the end, you almost had it right, and then his choices were either save your dad because you make personal choices, or get me and forget your dad because he did wrong things. And he tried to do both, and that's where he ultimately failed.
Yeah, I think it's partially the, what's his freaking name? Saw 4. It's
Jeff?
Yeah, it's partially Jeff, where it's like, you cannot save everyone.
Oh, no, it's Wahlberg's partner. Who you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, it's very much that of just like, dude, you
have to make a choice.
Yeah,
are you going to do the right thing, or are you going to keep covering up for dirty cops?
It reminisces on a lot of great Saw themes. It works with a lot of good things. I think other than bad acting from certain characters, I think the main players get it right. Chris Rock, Samuel L. Jackson, and then Max Minghella, who played Shank. All great.
They were fantastic.
They had to get it right. Everyone else was kind of meh. I think they blew their budget on the big 3. And that picture of Jigsaw.
Here's the thing. I liked this movie. I liked it a lot for all of the things, the very minor things that I complained about, which I try not to when we talk about movies. I really liked it. It was a fun movie to watch. It was a fun experience. That might be, just because it was the first movie that we've seen in theaters since The Rise of Skywalker. But I think it did what it was going out to do. Like, it was a Saw movie. That can be said. Or it was a movie of the Book of Saw. But, like I said, for all of the minor complaints that I had, it was a fun experience. Like, I think that they did great with the story. I think that they did great with the characters set up. I called it with the disciple, but that didn't ruin the experience for me. Like, I was waiting to see where the big reveal would come from.
Right, what the motivations were, how it worked.
Exactly.
Like, even when they're not completely subtle on things, they at least keep some secrets. It still works, remains interesting. I think this, like the Saw franchise, has more wins than it losses, and I think overall it's good. It's a better entry, or more satisfying to me than Jigsaw, because I think it takes elements that we're so familiar with, adds new ones, makes it even relevant
Mhm.
and takes the intrigue
Yeah.
of, well, what is Jigsaw without Jigsaw?
Yeah, I was on Twitter after we went to see the movie, and I saw a couple of tweets of people saying that it was a preachy movie.
Hmm.
And I was like, have you never seen a Saw movie before?
Right. Like
Like,
I mean, that's the thing is if we delve into a lot of things, there's a lot throughout the franchise. Now, in some entries, maybe less than others, but
mhm,
overall, there was always meant to be a narrative. There was
mhm,
always meant to be a reflection on reality and an indictment on reality as well.
I agree.
And it's meant to be almost this perspective of if we don't do the right thing, some bad person is going to do the right thing.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think that we have to face consequences of being bad people. And I think we have to be willing to understand that if we continue to do bad things, we're going to lose some rights to quality of life. We're going
Hmm.
to lose some friendships. We're going to
Yeah,
not be afforded some of the same things because nobody likes bad people.
yeah, and
And
go ahead.
and so we have to change. Now, if
Absolutely.
we don't take that into our own hands, someone will do it for us and we might not get the best results.
You might lose your hands.
So, you know, it's one of those things where, and that's where I've always said, where it's just like, is Jigsaw's methods wrong? Yes.
Yes.
Is his inspiration wrong?
Not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily. So it's one of those things, and I think I see that continue here, where it's just like you have now that applied to a system
Hmm.
where it's just like there has to be judgment and accountability. Yes.
Yes.
And if it doesn't come from within, it's going to come from the outside. Um,
I think we've been seeing that
yeah,
for the last two
I
years.
completely agree. And now I don't think people should don pig masks and
No,
blah blah blah. Have
I
to do the obligatory. I don't think that this is the right way. But no, I do think that it hits on notes that are real and relevant and necessary.
I'm gonna go ahead and say we are very for police reform.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a huge issue. Like you come from a police family.
Mm-hmm.
Like so you have seen the inner workings, I guess, to a
Yeah.
point. But if anything, events from the last couple of years have shown us there needs to be some kind of change.
Mm-hmm.
Things need to change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where that comes from, I don't know where that's going to come from, honestly, at this point.
Thankfully, not serial killers.
Yeah, I mean,
But
maybe.
yeah, I think that taking the reality of this is, yeah, I think that it highlights a very real issue.
Hmm.
I think if you fundamentally disagree that there's corrupt cops out there, I think that,
You haven't been paying attention.
yeah, I think that in and of itself is part of the issue. Um, you know, it's all about facing the question of how do we fix it, and we
Hmm.
have to fix it for the right reasons, not fix it to save credibility, not fix it to you know keep things the way they are, but
Hmm.
fix it so that the right thing is done for the right people by the right people,
Yes.
and that's ultimately what the goal should be. Anywhere, cops, people,
Hmm.
like no matter where you apply it, at the end of the day, we've got to do the right things for the right reasons, and we've got to be willing to face change when we find that we've been on the wrong side of things, when we find out that we've been doing things that have been
Hmm.
hurtful, willingly or not, to people. You know, and I think that that's what's so important and great about the story of Saw is it rubs up against real things, real issues,
Absolutely.
and I think you can watch and enjoy these movies, but I think you can also, if you're paying attention, learn something and be challenged and maybe even be inspired.
Hmm.
Not to do bad things, not to be a serial killer,
Please don't be a serial
but to
killer.
hopefully change and be a good person.
But if you do, please don't put our
I
names
mean,
on it.
technically, that narrative's been in there from the beginning. I
Hmm.
mean, even in Friday the 13th, they're like, don't care about sex and drugs and all this other stuff. You know, do your dang job. Like, I mean, it's always been preachy. Everything's always been preachy.
Horror is preachy.
You know, Sins of the Parents for Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's
Hmm.
just like you take the law into your own hands and now it's going to come back and bite you. Good people doing bad things does not make good things.
Hmm.
You know, it's like we could go all day.
Stitches, don't put on clown costumes.
You know, like there's all kinds of things throughout, like, and that's one of those things that pushes the boundaries of our understanding of horror movies. It's not just meant to be ooh scary, ooh
Hmm.
entertaining. It's meant to be like the scariest thing is real life, and
Hmm.
that's not just a cheesy tagline. That's real. All of these things come from somewhere,
Dude, how many movies were made about the Satanic Panic in the 80s?
right?
Like, it's insane.
So Hopefully you've enjoyed this journey into the story of Saw and our review and look at Spiral. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it if you get the chance to check it out and go to theaters. We highly recommend, if you can, safely to do so, because, heck, we all need a little break from life, and now that movie theaters are back, we should take full advantage of it. We are not done with horror, though, because we have another much more favorite franchise getting a sequel as well.
Yes.
And so immediately following this, aside from what we're doing with Nerd Herder and Hat Chatter, but for NerdyVerse, we are next diving into another James Wan inspired franchise, and that is the Conjuring verse.
Now, John.
Yes.
Repeat after me.
Yes.
La Llorona.
Oh, my Sharona.
La Llorona.
My Ricona.
La Llorona.
Ricola. So
I'm trying.
We're going to be diving into the Conjuring films and then wrapping that up similarly to this with the newest film, Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It.
Yes.
And so there's so many great movies in this series that we cannot wait to talk about. And so we'll be back with that. So hopefully you're enjoying this stint into horror that we're doing because if you hang out with us enough, we're going to talk about Star Wars, horror, and music mostly. So it's there. It's always there. So you're just going to have to put up with it. And we're happy for those that have been enjoying this with us, and hopefully you continue to enjoy it. Thank you to our patrons that support our habits. We appreciate you. If you want to support us, if you think we are worthy of your money, and if you would like to pay us good money to tell us what to do, you can do that at the links in the description and find our Patreon. We also appreciate our friends at the Red5 Network, folks that cheer us on, inspire us, and also do their own cool stuff that you can check out at red5network.com. We also appreciate Jesse and Game Infinite. The Game Infinite brand is always talking about gaming news, gaming articles, sharing cosplay art, and all kinds of other creativity. So if you like anything gaming, GameInfinite.net, Game Infinite on Instagram and Twitter is your place for all of that goodness.
We got that Sonic Direct
You
recently.
can also support us on Star Wars Infinite on Instagram. It's a partnership between us and Game Infinite where we talk about Star Wars in specific. So if you're into the Star Wars only, or if you're into all kinds of things, like the new Sonic game that's coming out, and Mass Effect got a new thingy, I don't know. I've never played one of those games, so I'm out of the loop. So I guess I need to read a Game Infinite article, and you can join me. Check it out. Other than that, we'll be back.
La Llorona.
My Canorona.
Goodbye.
My Corolla.
Wait a minute. You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.